There's a specific version of this that happens around 4 p.m. You have plans tonight. Plans you made, plans you wanted to make. And something starts shifting. Not dread, exactly. More like a quiet calculation. How much is this going to cost? And the answer that comes back isn't always one you can explain to the person waiting for you. So you go back and forth. You tell yourself you'll feel better once you're there. You remind yourself you said yes for a reason. And then, somewhere between getting dressed and walking out the door, the answer becomes final. You can't go tonight. This video is about what actually happened in that gap between the yes and the cancel, and why understanding it changes more than just your relationship with your own calendar. Here's the thing that most people miss about last-minute canceling. By the time the text gets sent, the story is already almost over. The real sequence starts much earlier. It starts the moment you said yes, because for a nervous system running on high-functioning anxiety, a social commitment isn't just an event on a calendar. It's an open account. From the moment the plan is made, some part of your system starts preparing. Not consciously necessarily. But something is already running in the background, modeling the interaction, anticipating the energy it will require, calculating what you'll need to manage and for how long. Anyone who's been in this knows that specific feeling of having a plan in the distance and being unable to fully relax until it's resolved, either attended or canceled. That low-grade hum of a pending social event. The way it sits in the corner of your awareness even when you're doing something else entirely. That's not anxiety about the event in the sense of fear. That's your nervous system doing bookkeeping. And the bookkeeping is expensive. So by 4 p.m. or noon or 2 days before, depending on the person, the account is already partially drained. And the question your nervous system is running isn't really, do I want to go? It's, do I have enough left to do this right? And for people with high-functioning anxiety, doing it right means something very specific. It means being present enough, engaged enough, warm enough, not visibly depleted enough. It means performing okay, and your nervous system knows what that performance costs. It's been tracking the cost all day. There's a particular kind of exhaustion that doesn't show up on the outside. You handled everything today. You were functional, probably effective, possibly excellent. You kept the noise inside. And that the keeping is where the depletion actually lives. Research on social functioning consistently shows that managing the gap between internal state and external presentation, what some researchers call emotional labor, is cognitively and physiologically costly, not metaphorically. In terms of measurable resource expenditure, attention, regulation capacity, the specific energy required to hold a presentation steady when the interior is not matching it. For most people, this is an occasional cost. For someone with high-functioning anxiety, it is a daily one, sometimes an all-day one, because the performing calm tax doesn't just apply at parties or dinners. It applies in meetings where you managed your heart rate through a question you weren't sure how to answer. It applies on the commute where you replayed a conversation from this morning and quietly resolved it 17 different ways. It applies in every moment today where you held something together that wasn't entirely together. By the time 4 p.m. arrives and the evening event comes into focus, the question isn't really about tonight. The question is whether the system has anything left after today. And here's the reframe that changes everything. I don't want to go and I can't go are not the same nervous system state. One is preference. The other is a resource reading. Most people who cancel plans with high-functioning anxiety are not, in that moment, choosing comfort over connection. They are hitting a hard limit that most of the people around them cannot see because the outside presentation has never shown it. So what is the cancel, actually? Not in the story you've been telling yourself about it, in mechanistic terms. Most anxiety content treats last-minute canceling as avoidance. And avoidance, clinically, means something specific, a fear-based behavior that provides short-term relief and reinforces the underlying pattern over time. Avoidance grows. The more you avoid, the larger the avoided thing becomes, and the smaller the window of what feels manageable gets. That is a real pattern, and it exists. But it is not the only pattern. And for high-functioning anxious people, it is often not the one at work. Because here's what avoidance doesn't explain. The person who cancels but still wanted to go. The person who was looking forward to it and meant the yes, and then found themselves incapable of leaving. The person who feels genuine grief when they send the text. Not relief, not satisfaction, not the temporary calm of having escaped something. Grief, because they know what they're losing. That grief is data. It tells you something important about what's actually happening. Because if this were pure avoidance, if the social situation were genuinely threatening to the nervous system in the fear response sense, there would be relief. There isn't always relief. Sometimes there's just the specific sadness of a nervous system that ran out before it got there. Here is the clearest way to hold this. The person who said yes to the plan and the person who canceled it are not in contradiction. They are the same nervous system at two different points in its resource cycle. The yes was real. The cancel was also real. Both of them were honest. And understanding that, actually understanding it, not just knowing it intellectually, is what starts to dissolve the specific shame that has probably been attached to this pattern for years. Because the shame was built on a misreading. The misreading that canceling means you didn't care enough, that you were weak, that other people manage it, and you don't because something is wrong with you. That's not what's happening. What's happening is a nervous system reading its own resource level accurately and giving you an answer you don't know how to explain to anyone. That's not a character flaw. That's a nervous system pattern. The part that often goes unaddressed is what to do with the relational damage. Because understanding the mechanism yourself is one thing. Explaining it to the person who got canceled on again is another. If that gap is familiar, there's a resource in the description built specifically for it. Communication tools for translating an invisible internal experience to the people on the outside of it, and repair frameworks for the relational patterns that anxiety tends to erode over time. Link in the description if that's the piece you need next. So what actually shifts once the mechanism is clear? 3 things. The first is the internal relationship to the behavior. When the cancel stops being evidence of a character flaw and starts being readable as a resource state, the self-directed shame has less to grip. Not gone, not immediately, but structurally different. Because shame operates by telling you the behavior is about who you are. Mechanism-level understanding tells you the behavior is about what happened to your nervous system between Tuesday and tonight. Those are different conversations. And the second one is a conversation you can actually do something with. The second thing that shifts is predictive capacity. Once you understand that the cancel is the end of a process, you can start tracking the beginning of it. The social energy accounting that starts when you say yes. The performing calm tax from the day. The specific depletion states that signal the system is already running close to empty. None of this is about canceling less. It's about understanding the resource math earlier so that the decision, whatever it is made from more information and less panic. And the third thing, the one that tends to matter most for the relationships that have absorbed the damage, is that there are words for it now. Because one of the most isolating parts of this pattern is the inability to explain it in a way that doesn't sound like an excuse. I'm tired doesn't cover it. I have anxiety often produces more questions than it answers. But my nervous system ran out of what this costs, and I didn't know how to see it coming. That is something you can work with. That is something a person on the outside can begin to understand. It doesn't repair everything immediately. It doesn't erase the pattern for the people who've been on the receiving end of it, but it opens a different kind of conversation. And a different kind of conversation is where repair actually starts. One more thing, because the objection is already there. Other people manage to go out, even when they don't feel like it. Yes, and that's a genuinely different experience from what's being described here. Not feeling like going is preference. What's being described here is a system that has spent its available capacity and is accurately reporting that fact. The person who pushes through reluctance and the person who hits a resource limit are not doing the same thing. Treating them as identical is part of why the shame has been so durable. You weren't failing to push through reluctance. You were running out and not knowing that's what it was. If the relational side of this is where the cost has been highest, the Anxiety Relationship Repair Guide in the description is built for exactly this: how to explain what's invisible and how to begin repairing what the pattern has worn down. Link in the description and in the pinned comment. When you think about the last time you canceled, what was the gap between how you felt when you said yes and how you felt when you sent the text? Here's what this actually was. Not laziness, not caring, not a failure of commitment, or a sign that relationships are too much for you to sustain. A nervous system that was already carrying more than it could show, and that by 4 p.m. or midnight or the moment of getting dressed, had run the numbers and come up short. The person who said yes meant it. They were looking forward to it. They were thinking about what they'd wear and what they'd say. and how good it would be to see that person. They just ran out of what it costs, and no one had ever told them that was a readable state, not a flaw, not a choice, not evidence of what they were capable of sustaining. A state, something that has a mechanism. And a mechanism is not a verdict. The work ahead is not about canceling less by force of will. It's about understanding the resource cycle well enough to see it earlier, to recognize the accounting before it's already overdrawn, to build, slowly and imperfectly, a different relationship between what you commit to and what you actually have available. That's slower than you want it to be. It will not fix the friendships that have already absorbed the pattern before you had language for it. It won't immediately produce the clean record of kept plans that you wish you had. What it does is change the interior experience of the thing. The shame that has been filling that gap between the yes and the cancel, that specific weight, has a different shape once it has an explanation underneath it. Not gone, but different. So if you made it here, the next time the 4 p.m. shift happens and the calculation starts running and you feel the account going into deficit, notice it. Just notice. Not to override it. Not to force a different outcome. Just to recognize what's actually happening instead of what you've been telling yourself it means about you. That recognition, small and imperfect and practiced over time, is the beginning of a different relationship with this pattern. And it's available right now. Anyone who's been in this, you already knew something was different about the way this was costing you. You just didn't have the mechanism. Now you do.